"Come here, girl," the same line I used to tell my dog to greet me home after a long day of school. That same comforting and worn line suddenly became one I disdained as I heard my voice from the attic calling out, "Come here, girl." I've never been the one that believes in the supernatural and unexplained, so I just thought it was someone near our house that had a similar voice and paid no mind to it afterwards. Until my roommate asked me why I was playing with Bella in the middle of the night, I froze. It wasn't a dream, it was real. It had to make sense by the law of something, right? I kept muttering as my roommate told me to forget it and everything would be alright. God, I wish he was right. The days after that I couldn't sleep, I lost my appetite and skipped all of my classes. All I could do was rationalize the situation. It stopped calling out my dog as it started to copy my muttering. I could tell it was my voice, but something was just off about it. Sometimes it was exactly the same, others it was in slow motion and sometimes even in different octaves. But it always did do something. It always laughed after mimicking me. Its laugh sounded like a twisted version of me crying. Today the voice stopped and it told me something. It didn't taunt me or torture me. It just told me to come closer. It took my voice again and repeated, "Don't be afraid, champ, come here." It kept saying it over and over again, but this time it sounded inviting. It made me calm, so I finally unlocked the door and climbed up. What I saw chilled me to my core. Standing before me was this creature that vaguely resembled a human. I could tell it wasn't only mimicking me but also trying to become me. It had my body size and skin color right to the bone, but its flesh did not shift yet. It had open flesh wounds all over its body. It looked very malnourished, but the most horrifying was its neck. The neck wasn't like any human or mammal neck, it had gills. As I stood there in shock, it opened its mouth and the gills flapped and moved as it said, "Come here, good girl." I left running and didn't look back. I left all my stuff and dropped out of college. I've never heard it since and have had a pretty good life after that, got married and had a beautiful baby girl. I had completely forgotten about that thing until today at breakfast my daughter asked me, "Daddy, why did you talk so funny at night?" I was confused at first until it hit me. That thing has found me and it has come to finish its job. It's now on the other side of this door. I'm writing this with tears in my eyes, alone locked at my bathroom. The knocking has turned to pounding. I'm scared and terrified. I beg you, if you ever hear your own voice, pray as it has sure as hell has heard you. You guys ever met someone you just see as strange? Not in a bad way. Just your occasional community member that always makes you kinda look and wonder. Damn, I wonder how his life is. For me, that was good old Fred the fisherman, or as we always called him, Fisherman Freddy. He was kinda your stereotypical, crusty fisherman, with a bushy unkept beard and a voice that sounds like he found himself on the other end of too many Marlboros back in his day. However, despite his somewhat ominous appearance, he was always a nice guy. He especially loved to give tours or fishing experiences on his boat to the locals, sometimes for free. In all honesty, I think he was just lonely. Another important thing about Freddy is he loves sharks. And when I say love, I mean genuinely loves them. Sharks to him are like money to us, can never have too many of them. It's his lifelong dream to catch and reel in the amazing great white shark. The problem, however, is that for some reason, he never got one. He always blames his bait, saying that the chum isn't fresh or that the damn locals don't know good bait from their own ass, and all the classic lingo. This summer, however, became abnormally active with shark activity, and several local people have been bitten or have had a close encounter with sharks. Of course, Freddy is always on the scene asking questions like he's Ron Burgundy sometimes. Asking things like, how old were they? And, did they wear any special chemicals, which I assumed to mean sunscreen or tanning oil. Like everyone else, I was kinda put off by this, but as insensitive as it was, he was obsessed with sharks. Granted, I learned how obsessed he was soon enough. Fred became more and more crazy after the shark attacks, and somehow during his community cruises, someone would receive some sort of injury or fall overboard, and when I say injury, I mean severe injury. Fingers being cut off, skin being peeled, all of which happened when he taught his patrons how to fillet a fish. Whenever they get back to shore and the EMT asks for something to reattach, it miraculously disappeared. While all of it was strange, it could have been coincidental. But, my stupid self decided to investigate. I booked a tour with Freddy for a Tuesday evening to catch some fish, and it turns out myself and another person were on board, and that was it. We climbed onto Freddy's rickety old ship and got our bait set up, but as we were doing so, Freddy said, "Remember to not pay too much attention to your bait, it's bad luck." Myself and the other patron kinda just laughed it off as some sort of old fisherman tale and moved on with our trip. All seemed normal until the guy I was with went below deck to find more bait because he had accidentally spilled his bucket all over the deck. Freddy came rushing upstairs and started yelling frantically. "The fuck do you think you're doing? Do you know what I had to go through to get that bait? That there is shark bait." Visibly shocked, me and the other guy just kinda continued to fish, and I let him borrow some of mine. He went downstairs to use the restroom, and I heard a real loud thud and what I thought was a scream. I came sprinting downstairs and asked for who was screaming, and Freddy said simply, "The damn boards of this ship, that's who, haven't gotten them fixed right in a long time." I shrugged it off and went back upstairs. Freddy followed me about 35 minutes later with some new bait, and said that the other guy was seasick and had to be in the bathroom. The guy seemed fine to me, but to each his own, I suppose. I reached in to grab some bait, but what was peculiar to me was that it wasn't only warm, it was thick and had large chunks in it as well. But then I realized what really shook me to my core: there was hair in it too. I sprinted downstairs because I felt immediately nauseated and the guy was still in the bathroom. Freddy said to simply, "Let it out," over the side, but I kept pounding on the door and eventually it cracked open. I couldn't see much, but there was a lot of red in there, a whole lot. That's when I put it together. The hair and meat I was chumming the waters with was the guy. I ran upstairs terrified but didn't want to worry Freddy. I rummaged through the other guy's bag and he had SPF 30 sunscreen with him, something one of the victims from the onslaught of shark attacks had on when they were bitten. Like a rush, it all came over me that this guy wants a shark so bad that he is willing to use people to chum the waters. I used what little cell service I had to call the harbor master and they showed up relatively quickly. They arrested him, and had found the remains of missing persons, people who were injured on his ships and cruises, and even animals he was allegedly experimenting with. All I know is, next time you go fishing, make sure you check the bait you're using because you never know if it could be someone you're using.